So we'll go ahead and get our thread started here. Right behind the bead is fine. We're going to use some nano silk today. I can crank down on it. It's not going to give me extra bulk, and I just really don't need extra bulk on this fly. The material we do the body out of is going to be more than sufficient for my body size. So we've got our thread secure here to the hook. And we'll just go ahead and take this back to the back end of the hook, dropping it about where the barb would be. I mashed the barb down here on this one, which I always do unless I've got a barbless hook just to start with. So we've got our thread here secured to the hook. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to tie in our biots, or our goose biots that will be in the back, and in the back we're going to use the gold color. So that will be this one here, and you'll see as you kind of just bend the feather itself, you can see how those biots kind of stick out. I'm just going to find 2 of them. I'm not going to tie both of them on simultaneously, but I found 2 of them here. I'm just going to sneak my scissors in here in between and clip them, and now I've got them in my fingers here. With these biots, one thing that you'll notice, and this one is not as exaggerated as others, but they usually have their own natural curve, and I want the tails on this to curve out and away from the shank of the hook. So we're just going to hold the biot here. Lengthwise, I want it about the length of the body, so right about there is where I'm going to want this guy to be tied in. And I'm just going to kind of hold it in place up against the shank of the hook while I take a fairly loose wrap of thread around, just so that I can get that secured into place there. And I'll take a couple more wraps backwards, and that'll help me get that one in place. Then I'm going to grab my second one, and I'm going to look at where it curves. It's curving this way, and I want it to curve towards me. So let's push our bead back up, and I want this to be the same length as this other one. So I'm going to, on the opposite side of the hook closest to me, just take that and we'll give it a nice solid wrap there, just like so. And from there I'm going to use the biots here, the ends, to just build up a little bit of bulk. We don't need a lot of bulk, but I'm just going to go ahead and let those go kind of up there, and I'm going to grab my scissors and we'll just cut out the butt ends of these biots here up closer to the bead, and I'll just rotate my vise around so that I can get a nice shot at those biots there. Okay, so we got those trimmed off. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of go over the top of those just to clean them up a little bit until we're right behind the eye again, or behind the bead. And we're going to come back to the back of the hook and kind of move them to where I want them for when I suck this down really good and tight. So I want them splayed out away from each other, clear at the very back end of the hook here. So I'm just being somewhat careful just to make sure that I'm maintaining that kind of split that I'm looking for. Hopefully you can see that when I rotate it. Now I've got those 2 tails kind of sticking out, and that will be the back end of our fly. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tie in our gold tinsel. That's going to be the ribbing on this fly. So I've just got the gold kind of flat tinsel here, and I will just catch that right here. I'll take some wraps securing that to the body or the shank of the hook, and then we're going to just bring our thread back. I'm not too concerned about covering much of anything up at this point, because the peacock herl is going to be the body on this, and it's going to cover everything up. I'm going to trim the tips so that they're all even. but also the tips are really fragile. So by clipping them off, I'm going to be tying in something that will be a little bit stronger than what the tips are. And so I'm just going to lay that on my hook, and I'm going to secure it back to the very back to where I want the body of this fly to start, or the abdomen of this, the back end of the abdomen to start for the Prince Nymph here. And I'm not going to crank down really hard on this nano silk because it'll cut right into that peacock herl, which will just make it break off very, very easily. In this case, just for the peacock, I'll probably use my bobbin cradle. So if I'm using my bobbin cradle, I'm going to just go ahead and quickly throw in a quick whip finish just to keep my thread kind of locked in place. The whip finisher just helps me make sure I get my thread behind the bead instead of front of the bead. Otherwise, I just use a half hitch. But here I want to make sure, absolutely sure that I don't get that thread in front of the bead. And then I'm just going to let that hang. Now I've got my my peacock herl here at the back, and I'm going to give it a couple of twists, not a lot, just a couple, and that'll help keep them together. And then we're just going to avoid the point of the hook and make sure we get one really good wrap at the back here, and then we're just going to work our way straight up the body, or up the shank of the hook, creating a nice kind of fluffy, fuzzy body made out of peacock herl. I'm going to take this all the way right up to the behind the eye of the hook, or the behind the bead. Okay, so there we go. I've got it right where I want it. I'm not going to let go because this stuff will come in. It's not wire, so it will unwrap. Okay, so there we go. We've got our peacock on there. I'm going to just go ahead and trim out the ends here really close to the bead, just like that. I take another couple of wraps just to make sure I got everything. So now we've got the abdomen done, or the bulk of the fly, and now I'm going to take my tinsel, my gold oval, and I'm going to take pretty evenly spaced wraps. This material is a little bit wider than just a normal wire, so I'm going to make sure that I have some gaps in between as I move up for that peacock to be showing through with. And then I'm up here at the bead. I'm going to throw a couple of thread wraps behind it towards the back end of the hook, and I'm going to throw a couple on this side as well. And with that, I'm ready to just go ahead and come on in and snip out my tinsel, because I'm done with that. Actually, I'm going to put some, I'm going to go ahead and put some legs on this one, and I'm going to use some partridge, Hungarian partridge that I'd actually pulled off to use on a different fly. I love using this partridge for the legs. So here's my partridge feather here, and I'm just going to strip the fuzzy end off, just so it's out of my way. Really, no other reason than that. So I have a nice clean stem that I'm working with right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a little V. I want this middle section here to go away, and so I am going to carefully let my scissors go through the fibers there, and I'm going to clip. And you can see I've kind of hollowed that out with that clip. So when I'm doing the legs, all I'm going to do is I want this on the top of the hook. So it can help if you just aim straight down into that collar. And we're going to just pinch that into place. And we'll take a wrap or two here. And as I look at it, I'm looking and making sure that I've got some legs on either side, which I do. I'll go ahead and pull these out a little bit with my bodkin just so you can see them a little bit better. But they're certainly, we've got legs coming out both sides, which is what I was looking to do. So now I've got my legs on. I'm going to, take a couple more wraps just to secure it back here. Then I'll pull the stem backwards, do a couple of wraps on this side of it, and then I can just come in and clean that up with my scissors. So we're just going to clip that off, the balance of that feather, that Hungarian partridge feather out. And what we're left with now are, legs coming out of either side of the fly here. A couple of pieces of white turkey or goose biot. So here's my white, similar to the other. This time, rather than clipping them, I'm actually going to try to strip them and get some of the feather shaft on there with the white. So we got a couple right here, good candidates. I'm just going to grab those and I'm going to strip them off so that they're almost together. They're stuck together. So we'll just hold those right over the top of the hook, and we're just going to secure them with a couple of thread wraps to kind of keep those right in place there. And I'll just take a few wraps here as well as on the other side, just to make sure that these are held in place pretty nicely. From here, I'm just going to go ahead and trim those butt ends off as close as I can to my thread without cutting off all my legs at the same time. So we've got it like that. And these horns are actually going to lay backwards over the top of the hook. So I'm going to take one and have it aiming off onto the lens side of the hook. So I've kind of got a hold of it right there. And I'm just going to take a few thread wraps there just to kind of hold it in place over on that side. That's where I want it. Now this one I'm going to want over on the opposite side. So I'm going to kind of crease it with my fingers. I'm sure I'm just covering everything up. I'm going to crease that down just like that. And then I'm going to take a few thread wraps to hold that in place. And so that's what we end up with here. Go ahead and get those sticking out a little bit more. Just like so. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'll just do some final wraps here to cover up those butt ends behind the bead a little bit. And then we'll whip finish. And then we'll see if there's any housekeeping things that we need to do on this particular fly. So got a nice black collar going there. Give myself some extra thread. Grab my whip finisher. And we'll go ahead and just do a few whip finish turns here. Disengage, pull it tight. And we can cut off our thread at this point. And you end up having exactly what we're looking for. That's, this is what the Prince Nymph looks like. So it's got the, we still have those golden tails sticking out the back where we wanted them. I want them up a little bit more. We've got the nice body with the peacock herl and the ribbing. We've got our little our legs sticking out here that come from our partridge, and then we've got the white horns coming off the back end there, and that's the Prince Nymph.